What's up, metalheads? Welcome to the premiere episode of a brand new monthly series we're launching on the channel that we're going to call The Right Winner. Basically, what this show is the Oscars are a big thing. They're giving out awards, Best Picture, but there's some years that people on the whole think they didn't get that right. They didn't get that right. So we take it upon ourselves to go back and rectify the situation. And we give out who we think is the right winner. I'm joined by a great panel today. First of all, good old trusty sidekick, Zach Ford. Zach, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to get the show running. It's a great viewing experiment to get myself and get each other to watch movies that we've maybe been pushing back, and also, think about movies in terms of history and through different decades, what those movies meant then, what they move now. So I think it's just, for the shows we do here on Full Metal or other stuff, is a different perspective to really dive into the history of film. So it's great.
All right. And also next to him, he is the one who won the Oscars call-out match. So having him on the no-brainer. Paul Oyama. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, yeah. If anyone that knows me knows I'm a big fan of the Oscars. And yeah, the Oscars doesn't exactly always get it right. This show just sounded like a elongated version of the Dan Murrell JTE podcast. I don't know if any of you have ever heard that, but those are some of my favorites. And I think it's interesting to look back with a historical lens because, Oscar Best Pictures are decided like in the spur of the moment. And I think it's important to give perspective on how things might have changed over the years, decades, what have you, since the awards came out. So this should be a lot of fun.
Right on. And rounding out the panel today, we have Dan Skip Allen. Dan, how you doing?
I'm not really in a good mood right now. I should be at my Infinity War screening, but my outlet couldn't get me in. The theater said it was in a small theater, and they didn't have enough room for me to be in my screening. So I'm here doing this with you guys instead. So
glad you're your second choice there, Dan.
Yeah, let's just
glad for the consolation prize. All right. Well, Grumpy Dan aside, Zach, I'm gonna go to you first. Give us the whole rundown of how this is gonna work.
Yeah. So this show is broken into two segments. The first is going to be about discussing and analyzing the nominees of the Oscars that year. So, for example, for 1994, which is our focus for this year, we're going to be doing Quiz Show, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and Forrest Gump. And then we'll each kind of discuss each movie as a group, and then at the end we will share our rankings and our combined group rankings of those five movies, say out of those what really should have won. But then the second half we're going to dive even a little more deeper into that year and say what really should have won, as in the movies that they didn't even nominate. So going through the five, we each have created a list of five movies that we believe should have been nominated. Some of them may cross over with what actually did get nominated, but some may not have been there. And then creating a group list of nominations there, which I believe now through my contacts will be the official canon of Oscar nominations. The actual 1994 nominations are gone, and our list is what's going to be mattered, and all my resource books for it are just going to magically change and have these movies on there.
So we're essentially we're rewriting the canon of the Oscars.
We're rewriting history, yes.
When I contacted them, the Academy was a little hesitant, but after some negotiating, they've decided that we're now the record bookkeepers of Oscar history. So let's get that.
I just flashed my dimples and I get my way.
As long as we're official, it's all that matters on this show. So we have our nominees for that year. Let's do a quick rundown again. We have Four Weddings and a Funeral, Quiz Show, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and the winner of that year, Forrest Gump. So let's start talking about Four Weddings and a Funeral. I, for one, think this is sorry, Zach?
Nope, go.
Yeah, okay. Well, either way, I think this is a delightful movie. Like, I'm not a big rom-com fan, so when one comes along like this, it's really earnest. It's two really likable leads. I really enjoy this movie a lot.
I did for like an hour, and then it's just started to die for me. I still enjoy it. There's still the charm to go there. But not all the jokes last. But the real thing that holds me back from loving it is the charm is there, but it shouldn't, because they're horrible, horrible people. And movies where you're supposed to love and root for, where they are cheating on each other and like running out of someone on the wedding. I just can never want him to be happy after he ran out on someone the wedding. I just can't find that the right thing to do. I think it lacks like a moral compass, which isn't fair for me to judge a movie based on its moral compass. But when it's acting like that, it was the honorable thing for him to do, then I feel like it is fair for me to judge it in that sense.
I don't know. Maybe our moral compasses align differently. Well, because you're a better person than I am. But
maybe it's as a married person it just hits me harder.
That's possible. That's very possible. Paul, what do you think of Four Weddings and a Funeral?
I actually like this a lot. Mike Newell is not really a director that I generally care for, but this is definitely my favorite of all of his movies. It's also the first collaboration between Richard Curtis and Hugh Grant, who went on to make movies like Love Actually and Notting Hill. But yeah, I actually like this movie a lot. I know the characters aren't really necessarily ones that you should be rooting for, but I think the situations are really interesting. I think the concept is pretty funny, like this whole serendipitous idea of like running into each other all the time, which is something that I think you see in a lot of rom-coms now. The running to each other wherever you go. So I actually like this quite a bit. Hugh Grant is very good, and Andie MacDowell is not one of my favorite actresses, but this is a performance that I can really get invested in her character in. So
I really want to say that she's only because they could not find another British actress to put in that role.
When they had great British actresses there, they put aside roles. Kristen Scott Thomas might be the best performance in the movie, and one of the more interesting characters. I think both of the female friends are the most, and the gay couple are by far more interesting than anything that the leads have to offer. And they don't get as much focus as I felt that they were going to get in the 20 minutes in the beginning.
Yeah, like you said, Kristen Scott Thomas, she's always a delight when she pops up and stuff. She's such an underrated actress, and we never support him like that. She's always really nice out of the park. I want to get to Dan. He hasn't really said much. Dan, what do you think of Four Weddings and a Funeral?
Yeah, it's a funny movie. It's a movie for the time, though. Really, it's a dated type of movie, and romantic comedies really today are just on such a downslide. We rarely get great romantic comedies anymore, let alone romantic comedies that get nominated.
I disagree with that greatly. I think they became
rom-coms. Yeah.
I think that's maybe why Four Weddings doesn't hold up, is because rom-coms have elevated. I think the comedy level of it has become stronger and wittier, and maybe a little lesser on the romance side, but still effective in that way. And I think Four Weddings kind of hurts from what I've came to expect of my romantic comedies.
Although I will say, like, in defense of Dan, I understand what he's saying, because like when we say a romantic comedy, the first you can think of like 30 to 40 really shitty titles in your head that come to your head like immediately, half of which star Rachel McAdams. But the rest, there are some really shaded Rachel McAdams. No, not shaded Rachel McAdams. Shaded Rachel McAdams agents.
The ones that
what I was saying is though,
the ones that are bad are the ones that try to duplicate this kind of tone and style.
No,
and
exactly.
That's why they don't work.
Like, I will not have this About Time or the Notebook slander anywhere.
Oh yeah, About Time's great.
It's not happening.
Okay, About Time's really good. But Notebook is
all I said was the genre. I don't know. Chance is trying to say something, but of course I'm talking over him. I don't know. All I said was the genre has kind of gone downhill lately. But we had these Oscar contending romantic comedies back in the 90s, with Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt and Four Weddings and a Funeral, where I think it was a genre that was still at a height of where it was in like the 80s and so forth. The 80s really had a great decade for romantic comedies. And of course, back in the day, way back, you had a lot of romantic comedies back in the day, back in the 50s and the 60s and so Some Like It Hot and all these kinds of different movies. But I think this is the height of Hugh Grant's career. We all know the scandal with him and the hooker and all this stuff. And Andie MacDowell really she had 2 or 3 good movies in her, and this is probably one of the better ones she was in, you know. But really, this movie, there was better movies out in 1994 that could have been nominated besides Four Weddings and a Funeral. It was funny for what it was, but is it really Oscar Best Picture worthy material?
Well, we get to that question later.
Yeah, it is really refreshing that a comedy got nominated because we talk about how comedies get ignored now.
Well, but there was 90s was kind of the time for that, like with A Fish Called Wanda. It just was. I feel like as a genre, comedy was something taken more seriously, at least by the Academy. Where like now you don't really see anything that's like a rom-com get nominated outside of like something like Midnight in Paris.
Okay, so that will close us out for Four Weddings and a Funeral. It seems like a pretty mixed response to it.
Mixed response. I mean, some of us are a little more positive to it, i.e. me and Paul. But it's still a little mixed, but not as mixed I'm sure it's going to get. So next one I want to go to is Quiz Show. Of course, the Robert Redford directed movie about the 21 game. That was the name of the game show, if I'm not mistaken. I really like. I didn't discuss the movie until a little later, and I was shocked to find out how much I really enjoyed that movie. Maybe it's because I'm a sucker for like political issues, like, or not political, like in this case, but like different kinds of like that. Yeah, conspiracy movies. Thank you, Paul. That was what I was looking for. I'm a sucker for conspiracy movies. I think this was done really well, and especially like you have this great cast. You have Rob Morrow. You have Ralph Fiennes. Like I said, Robert Redford at the helm. I think this is a movie stacked with talent that really yields a really great product.
Yeah, I'm really amazed by, or I was worried that the stakes weren't going to be there for me because it is just about cheating on a game. There's nothing really life or death or anything about it, but they were able to make it relevant and make it work and create a bigger scope to why is this authenticity important and what it means to this community that they lied and weren't being delivered a product of humans that they were following. They were being dealt inauthentic characters and heroes that they were following, and why that mattered. And that was really about how I was able to feel this movie was really effective.
Yeah, honestly, I love this movie. This movie I think is phenomenal. I have watched it probably 4 or 5 times in total. It's available on Netflix now, which makes it a lot easier to watch. But like, yeah, John Turturro is great. I think the writing is like really clever, and I think like the stakes are like enhanced in a way that like is kind of unexpected for like a movie about cheating on a game show. But I think this movie is fantastic. Redford's direction is really good. You got a couple of fun cameos from Scorsese and Barry Levinson. But yeah, just overall, I think just as a product, this movie is just really excellent, and like it's a lot of fun. And like despite it being a conspiracy movie, I always find myself fully enthralled, despite knowing what the end result is.
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
And I think movies that no, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
You know, I mean, I saw all these movies. Let's be honest here. I've seen every single one of these movies in the theater when I was 14, 13, 14 years old, whatever it was. And this one really resonated with me a lot. But I have such a resentment for Robert Redford for previous years in the Oscars that the two things that really made the movie worthwhile for me was John Turturro and Ralph Fiennes, and they were like two exact opposites of one another. But there's also an underlying flavor of racism because of John Turturro's character was Jewish, and God forbid a Jewish guy keeps winning. He's never going to lose, and he knew the answers, and they were going to have this white bread, clean-cut white guy take over for a Jewish guy. And back when we have athletes like basketball players and entertainment in sports is such a huge thing now. We elevate them to such a level now. Back then, you didn't have as much of that. So game shows were a big thing because it was like a wholesome American thing to do. Sit and watch whatever game show it was that was on, or a couple of the Andy and Opie and some of those type of shows back in the day. So it elevated a lot of white people probably didn't want to see a Jewish guy keep winning and winning and winning and winning. And so, of course, they rigged the show. So the movie, though, I really did love the movie when I first saw it. I thought it was a fantastic movie.
I will say I think that the movie is trying to directly combat that idea, and I think that the fact that it's like sort of uncovering this conspiracy is like making a statement about people's expectations and what people want in their celebrity, whether it be, you know, athletes or actors, or in this case, quiz show contestants. So I think that this movie is like sort of tackling the idea of like the wholesome American that we all are rooting for. So
yeah, and maybe these unfair expectations we place among people, because I do think they make these characters sympathetic. You understand why they cheated, and even though they have such different lives, why they both are kind of searching for an acceptance more than money. But it is so relevant to us today, where I still feel like we kind of idolize these celebrities and create these unfair depictions and unfair expectations of how they should be, and kind of dehumanize them in a way. We forget that they, you know, are real people and have flaws as well. And that is a great perspective to analyze this movie, which I didn't think of while I was watching it.
Yeah, I think this movie takes on like a new context when you look at today's idea of celebrity and how people become celebrities. And I think that like, when you look at like John Turturro's character, like the idea of him not being who they want to be the winner, I think that's something that you can see through a 2018 lens and gets like something else out of the movie.
Absolutely, and I also give movies a lot of credit when they're able to, because like on paper, this concept, it doesn't sound very interesting on paper, but like when you put it to film and you have a director who can make that really intriguing and really interesting. I give it a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
All right. So I believe we said everything we need to do about quiz show. Way more positive than we're on Forward Eggs and a Funeral. And I think we're going to keep that positivity going for at least 2 more picks, because up next we have a favorite of the year of 1994, The Shawshank Redemption. Of course, the Frank Darabont's directorial debut based on Stephen King novellas, starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman as 2 prisoners, one of which is trying to escape after being falsely imprisoned. I adore this movie. I remember the first time I watched this, it was on, I believe it was on cable, and I was on cable on record because I heard
it's always on cable, so that would make sense.
It's always on cable, so if you've never
It's the
seen
Shawshank Channel.
Yeah,
the Shawshank Channel. It's like a Christmas Story. Christmas Story you can always find on cable on Christmas Day. Shawshank you can find on cable anytime. But that was the first time I watched it, and I just remember being just so completely just blown away by it, just by like the filmmaking techniques and the performances, and how just the way the story unfolded, and how, like the whole great message of hope. I really love Morgan Freeman. The movie possibly my favorite of his performances. I really love Tim Robbins in the film, and I think it did a really great job of putting you. It did a really great job of tone, and a really great job of instilling that feeling, that spirit of Andy Dufresne in you.
I definitely feel like I'm going to be playing devil's advocate here. I am, because I do enjoy this movie. I like the movie, but I have some flaws with it that I want to make sure go express, because otherwise I think this will be kind of a praise fest. But
God forbid we praise a movie.
Yeah, how dare! Shawshank needs to be put down in its place. But there is a sense of nostalgia to it that I think is what makes it so watchable and so likable to people. But it's also, it's a prison movie. So there's this warmth that it creates around these people being in prison, and the life in prison just doesn't sit entirely well with me, especially when we've seen so many like raw portrayals of prison.
Oz.
That kind of dominate there. Yeah, like Oz, or the movie Started Up a couple years ago. It's really great. And there's also just the idea of good and evil is very black and white. The characters, these are prisoners, so technically there's the grayness inherent in who they are, but you don't really see that. They don't play their flaws out greatly. They're people that you want to love and root for and care for and think of the pure heroes. And then the prison guards and the warden are just so over the top evil and against them that there's really
kind of caricatures, honestly, like of what like an evil guard would be like. So yeah, sorry to kind of derail your point there, Zach, but I actually agree with you a lot. I think this is a really well-made movie. but I don't know. It's like probably my third favorite movie directed by Frank Darabont. I just think that a lot of the pathos in this movie is really muddled, and I think that the way that they approach Andy Dufresne's character is sometimes complicated, and like I don't know if I'm fully on board with the way that it paints with really broad strokes, and I think that you lose some of the nuance that I think could have been executed when you put someone like this into an environment that is as toxic and evil and as rotten as it is here. And I think a lot of the machinations of the plot are really convenient, like the way that they escape and like them finding each other at the end of on the beach. Like it's just a little much, I guess, for me is my thing. So I don't know.
After the first time I watched it, I just watched it for the second time a couple weeks ago, and the whole ending in my head from memory I thought didn't actually happen. I thought that was a dream, and I found that idea a lot more satisfying than now realizing they actually happened. So that was a little disappointing.
Yeah, it's another thing. Not that the IMDb list really matters, but the fact that this is like the #1 movie of all time on the IMDb top 250 is kind of ridiculous to me.
Well, I think it's really watchable.
Alien's not even top 50, and Interstellar in the top 50. So
like I said, but it's still that's like a thing that people propagate, and I think that's kind of crazy when you think about that.
Well, let me just say, Chance and I have had a slight little conversation about this in the past week or so. When you have movies and you give it time, maybe I don't know who I had this conversation with. Maybe it wasn't Chance. I don't know. Somebody, maybe it was Sandy Robinson. I think I had this conversation. When you give it time and you give it 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, you don't know what's going to resonate with people. And I feel like the feel-good nature of the overall story is what resonates with people. On the written page, Red isn't a black guy. It doesn't say who Red is on the written page. So they could cast anybody. Paul Newman was up for the role. I mean, some big, heavy hitters were up for that role, and they gave it to Morgan Freeman. I feel like if you look at the chemistry between Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, that's the gem, the joy that this film really transcends off of the screen to the viewer watching it. They have such a great chemistry on screen together, and it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, of course, we get like Cool Hand Luke, which really has a similar prison type of life, Escape from Alcatraz, films like that have a similar kind of prison atmosphere that are a little bit more brutal than this film. But I don't think it was meant to be the prison. It was meant to be two people found each other and they became friends. And that's what it really boils down to, in my opinion. And I think that's why the film was nominated for Best Picture. And of course, if it was 10, 15 years later, it probably would have won Best Picture. It just happened to come up in a tough year.
I think the message was more not about them becoming friends, but Tim Robbins kind of being a white savior in a sense, and teaching these people, these prisoners, what it means to like be free, and to live a richer life.
Which is a theme in Morgan Freeman's early work about white people coming in and treating him well, and that's
okay. Hold on. Now, before we get into all mystical Negroes and white savior talk, I don't think he needs to necessarily improve his. I said he need to improve his life. I think Red was off. I think Red was off doing his own thing. I think him being white had nothing to do with it. I think like race really had no part to play in that story. I think he just showed. Andy Dufresne just showed Red a different perspective on life. Like race had nothing to do with it. It was really just about the different ideologies, which is
honestly, I should have used white. Because I agree, it has nothing to do with race, but I think it did have to do with privilege in a sense.
Another thing is
as the rich accountant, well-to-do person, and also the only person that we know to be innocent. So he automatically is being shown as he's teaching everyone else that they need to have worth and feel worth, because we were pretty much told that he inherently has it just because he was, you know, more well-to-do in life already. So race was probably the wrong word, but definitely as someone with like privilege was coming in.
Privilege savior.
I think
okay,
even
we'll say Rich Savior. Rich Savior.
I think even though if race is not like at the core of what makes his character that, I think that's something you have to deal with when you cast specific characters in specific roles. Like that's just the ramifications of the story that you're telling. And I think like that's not necessarily all in the filmmakers, but I think that's like still part of the historical context of the movie and the way that people will interpret like the actions of certain characters.
It's not on the page. It's not on the page. And Morgan Freeman.
But it's on the screen. That's all that matters. It's like what people see.
Morgan Freeman ran with that, and it didn't have to be in the script. And he still took that character and made that character more than it was on this.
I don't think we have any problem with Morgan Freeman. He's great.
It's fantastic.
And
Tim Robbins is the problem in this movie.
It's kind of a
all right. Well, either way, like we'll talk about Shawshank, I'm sure, later. Wow, not as positive as I thought it was gonna be. Well, we're thinking about this next pick because our next pick is Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. Of course, the great crime ensemble piece starring many people: John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Ving Rhames, Bruce Willis, Christopher Walken. So many such a great ensemble in this movie. And I'm gonna surrender. I'm not gonna show my cards yet, so I'm gonna surrender the floor to someone else.
I feel like everyone's gonna know your cards. This is still, you know, Shawshank and Forrest Gump has developed their haters.
Okay,
this one still has few haters.
How about Dan goes first this time, since he hasn't started one off yet?
Well, let me tell you guys. I mean, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself. I saw all these movies in the theater. I enjoyed it. It had, you know, it has its moments. But I think of whereas Shawshank Redemption has endeared itself 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Like you said, I think there's a stat where Shawshank Redemption's on TV every day of the year, sometimes like more than 365 times a year. It's like on every day. Pulp Fiction is like a novelty act, and it kind of had a spice to it and an interesting flavor to it at the time. And then as years go by, I mean, even though Sam Jackson, John Travolta, Uma Thurman, Bruce Willis, these guys, they're all good in the movie. No, there's no doubt about it how good they are in this movie. And this is a really good movie for the time. I just think where you have multiple storylines and stuff like that, it's been done better since then by people like Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu and 21 Grams and Babel and some movies like that. I think it really does fall kind of short. And at the time, I understand why it was nominated for Best Picture, because at the time it was a groundbreaking kind of different kind of feel of a movie, and I enjoyed it for what it was. Today, I think it really kind of loses its luster, in my opinion.
Okay, really? Okay, so now I got to step into this ring. Gloves are off now. But no, like you're saying that, like that whole thing, it's kind of like a cheap trick. It's kind of like, I don't necessarily think it is, because I don't think it like I look at something like Memento, which you take away. I mean, you take away the whole like unconventional storytelling. The movie isn't as good, or like Sixth Sense, where if you know that twist, the movie's still good. It's just not as good if you don't know that twist. But Pulp Fiction, I think, is just as good a movie with or without the unconventional storytelling, because you have these great memorable characters, you have this great script, and you have this great direction with so many you had this great direction with so many different interesting storylines. And I think every character when he gets their due, everybody gets a chance to shine. And I think the script and the characters shine more than the unconventional storytelling.
Yeah, I think people have pressed the non-linear narration way too much. That this was the big landmark moment in film, but that concept is not like that important, and yes, it has changed how movies were made, but a lot of kind of rip-off movies, that's very, I feel like it should be unique to Pulp Fiction as something special, but not something that I think is important to the history of film and how we should move film along. I think what is important is his use of, you know, film history and be able to meld all his inspirations into something new and exciting, and honestly kind of on a different plane of what he was being inspired by. He kind of elevates some of that material to a new level, and it just makes for an exhilarating watch that I think ages very well. I think it's one of the most rewatchable movies we have on this list. There's something new you can kind of grab onto every time you watch it, and always come out with the same kind of exhilaration at the end.
Yeah, I think
absolutely. And this is a movie that, like, anytime the very first time I saw it, I was in a theater, and every time I get a chance to see it in a theater, I go, because like it's that rewatchable to me, at least.
Yeah, I think the age argument, I think is weird, because I think this movie, maybe of all of these, has aged the best. I think like the dialogue still snaps, the movie still, it really moves. Like this, you don't ever feel the length in this movie. Every character has like their own things to do, and it's just like there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's still coherent. I think like it tells an effective story. And while I don't necessarily love Tarantino, I think this is like sort of Tarantino at his most Tarantino. Like that is a very stylized dialogue, and like the nature of the storytelling, and like juggling all these cast members. And I think that just generally this movie is one that's like such a landmark in movie history. And I think it like pushed a lot of like the independent film movement forward, and sort of exploded Tarantino onto the scene. He was huge after this.
And a lot of his arguably best work as a writer and director came from this movie.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say I feel like he's made better movies since then, and arguably, you know, the independent movement and stuff. We got to remember the producer on this was Miramax and Harvey Weinstein, and he's, you know, we know where he is today. And I know this had some fun dialogue and some really great speeches and stuff. Look, though, I saw a movie this previous year called Darkest Hour, where Gary Oldman gives some amazing speeches, but do people even talk about? Yeah, he win the Oscar, sure. But when I bring that up, people are like, oh, the speeches. I mean, they're just as good as any speech in Pulp Fiction, in my opinion.
That was super traditional in a lot of the way it was filmed. It didn't have anything.
This was on the cutting edge, and like there's a lot of subversiveness going on here. I think that is not really present in a lot of movies that are of this style. I think that this has sort of changed the landscape of crime movies like this, because so many crime movies after this you see try to be like Pulp Fiction, and I think it really set a standard for people to follow. And yeah, it's not my favorite Tarantino. Like it's probably not even top 3, but this movie is it's important, and I think it's really effective, and it's a big part, and it's especially for 1994. This is a huge step forward, I think, for movies.
And I mentioned that for that year, it definitely deserved to be nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture. It was a groundbreaking film for that year. I just feel like it doesn't hold up. Chance obviously thinks it does hold up in you guys' mind as well. I don't know. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, whatever. I mean,
that's fair. I just think that we're judging it as a 1994 movie. Like we're not judging it in the lens of 2018. So like it's just that's how you have to interpret it, as how it came out then. You can't really, like, if it came out now, it'd obviously be different. But that's just not. I don't know.
I don't think it will. I think it was still like hit the sparks. I mean, still hit. Quentin Tarantino comes out with new movies and they still hit just as great as ever. And I don't think he is. You know, maybe you could say they're better. He's improved some parts, but he was still gunning on all levels during this, and doing something special and different that he hasn't been able to. Certain parts of it he hasn't been able to repeat in his other movies. So I really think it still has something to bring to modern audiences if you haven't seen it before. And it wouldn't be derivative, because a lot of what was derivative after wouldn't have came out if you want to go in the time machine.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like we wouldn't have these Pulp Fiction if it was not Pulp Fiction. So it's a cycle. So it has to go that way. All right, and we go on to our last movie.
This is the winner of
1994. Yeah, this is going to be entertaining. The Academy Award for Best Picture of 1994. Forrest Gump. Now, is anybody super positive on this movie?
Well, yeah, I want Dan to go. I am fortunate to know some of our already rankings. I have
yeah, so Dan,
no one told me it. I just read.
Go first.
Dan goes first. For sure.
I'll tell you what. Zach works at a school. I don't know if he works with underprivileged kids that are kind of have disabilities and stuff like that. Well, I got a chance to work with a lot of types of kids like that when I worked for 20 years at a high school. And, to see a disabled kid and have some problems and and grow out of those problems and be able to develop a weapon. It's fiction. We know it's fiction. It's completely fiction, but spin real life history around a fictional character and to have a really good feel and a really good happy story in a world where we were in Iraq and we were in different things with different wars going on in the world, and have a kind of a feel good story that everybody can relate to. Yeah, he was running and he has a shirt and is accidentally becomes a popular t-shirt or different things that he ended up doing in the film. I know it's fiction and you have to look past that, but it's all part of a feel-good story, and have a happy story where even disabled people can have good things happen to them and meet friends, and they can befriend people. And I feel like Tom Hanks at this point in his career was at the top of his game with Philadelphia, then Forrest Gump, and of course Castaway and Saving Private Ryan. The 90s, he was just on fire in that decade. And I think it's the book. And in the book, it was on the page. Before we were saying it wasn't on the page, but now this time we're saying it is. The page is really what really made this script and this story such a great movie. And I think it deserved to win Best Picture. I think it was, at the time, we needed this. We needed this kind of movie. We needed this kind of story for everybody. And they needed to walk out happy and enjoying life and enjoying these characters that were on screen by Robert Zemeckis and portrayed by Tom Hanks. I loved Forrest Gump when I was about 15 years old, somewhere in there.
Before Chance busts a gasket,
I'm in the middle. I'm gonna go next, and we'll let the haters go last.
Oh, wait, no.
Yeah. Cut to me last.
The chances that you probably
I'm somewhere near you, Zach.
Yeah, I think it's an enjoyable movie. It's a good watch, and I'm happy to watch it. I know it's one of my wife's favorite movies, and the fact that I find one of her favorite movies watchable is a big thing, because a lot of her movie taste is horrible. What Dreams May Come, guys, it's like the worst shit. What Dreams May Come is such trouble. But Forrest Gump, it's another one. I understand why people like it. I'm highly engaged when I watch it. When Dan was speaking, I realized for the first time that it's kind of a reverse Shawshank, to where instead of it's the person who is better off teaching people what it means to be human or how to find more value in life, we do have someone who is from our eyes, from our perspective, we would think is a lesser off position as someone who is physically disabled to a way, someone whose IQ is lower, social skills might be a little lower, but still has such value in his own life that we can be inspired by. And I think that is worthy to consider. However, I do think it is a movie and a drama structured around one joke Robert Zemeckis had. I think he was drunk one night and goes, what if there's this dumb guy that caused all of history in the 1900s? And then they just created 30 jokes to go around that, and here's the movie. And that's the part that I think turns people's eyes away from it.
It is based on a Winston Groom novel. It's not an original idea by Robert Zemeckis.
No.
So I don't know if that the joke thing is quite valid.
It's not entirely credible in Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go next again. I'm gonna put off Chance, give him some more cinematic blue balls here. But no, I think that Forrest Gump is a good movie, and I think it's effective for a lot of the reasons Dan says. But I don't think that is what Best Picture is for. I think if that's what Best Picture is for, then Hidden Figures would have won over Moonlight. And I don't think that that's right at all. I think Best Picture is supposed to be looking forward and looking at movies that not only capture people in the now, but that will capture people moving forward, and that will matter and have long-lasting legacy. And I think this is a movie that is really complicated. It paints people who are mentally disabled in a very weird light. Forrest doesn't really have a lot of agency over his actions. He's sort of just roaming around through history. Gary Sinise is admittedly excellent in this movie, and he's one of the best parts of the movie by far. But I think that again, the broad strokes never ages well, and I think that's what Forrest Gump is as a character. And I think for that reason, like, despite the fact that this movie like is effective emotionally at times, I think that it becomes problematic the more that you think about it. And I think that's not what you want in a Best Picture winner. And
I say something, but I think the most flawed character would be Jenny, by far. Which, and we'll let Chance expand on that idea.
yeah.
Okay, look. So before I rip shit into this movie, before I tell like I'm ripping shit into this movie before than I mean to, like, I don't think, is this a horrible movie? I don't think so. I mean, sure, it's directed nice. Tom Hanks is good in it. Gary Sinise, I'll say Gary Sinise is way better in this movie than Tom Hanks. But here's my biggest problem before I think Paul kind of outlined this. I said Paul and Zach kind of outlined this. You have this guy who is literally, like, the contract of this movie does not work because you have this guy who's going through and pretty much changing the course of American history. And does he change? No, not at all. He is the same bumbling moron in the beginning of the movie that he is by the end of the movie, except by the end he's crying at a grave of a woman that is awful. It should not have been with him in the first place. That kid's probably not even his.
It gave him an STD.
He probably has AIDS and died right after this movie. But I mean, look, you have him. He was an all-pro football star. He had a multi-million-dollar business. He was a Medal of Honor winner. He met the president. He was a world-class table tennis player. He met the president twice, and he's yet to be able to sit on a bench and have nobody recognize. That doesn't make any sense. And sure, I mean, you can go and you can feel good, have a good time. Do you feel good because this whole movie is trying to chase someone who is an awful person? Like, Jenny is garbage. She deserved to die from AIDS. I wish she had jumped off that roof.
But I don't think, no, we shouldn't call her garbage because they do try to state like why she's led this life that she lived.
Look, she's understandable garbage. She's understandable garbage. And look, I'm sorry, I'm digging into her more than I mean to, just because
she was sexually abused by her father growing up. So maybe let's ease up on what she deserved.
Fine. I'm sorry.
Okay, like, abused and harassed throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pile out. I just don't like the way she treated Forrest. She treated him like a stray dog, kind of just mooching off of her entire life. And only when she is dying of the incurable AIDS virus, is finally like, okay, you know what? Fine, we can be together now. Yeah. And as far as like movies, like, look, you have like vast superior movies that like have greater themes and have greater messages and really transcend the age of cinema. And yet you get Best Picture to a movie that's essentially just celebrating like years of essentially like giving lip service. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. It's giving lip service to years of great American events, and I don't think within like the greater rear view of Best Picture, I don't think it holds up as well.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it is fiction. I said it's based on a book that's fiction, but it really does celebrate America. It celebrates everything about America that
without Forrest, we wouldn't have had Watergate.
It's just
sexual abuse describes America.
Remember,
ping pong,
Vietnam, fun. It's all
voting.
good fun, but it celebrates America while knowing in your head it's not real, but it still celebrates the birth of our country and how much we love the country and the different things that go on in our country and how a disabled guy can become a successful person. Of course, it's just trying to have a feel-good story and whatnot. And in our country, with all the negativity and all the news and all the things that are on, you know, it's good to have a feel-good kind of movie.
Was that the case in 1994?
Yeah, we had wars. We had Iraq. We had George Bush.
Oh, no, you're right, I guess.
The first George Bush was in Iraq and trying to get Iraq. Why do you think we went back to Iraq again? Because he wanted to get revenge for his old man who couldn't get the job done in 1994. I mean, it's just, you know, we had a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things going on in the world at the time. There's always a lot going on in the world. I'm not going to say just 94 or the 90s, there wasn't nothing going on. But it's just a feel-good story. Every once in a while, you got to sit back and say, you know what? This is a feel-good story with a good heartwarming story, a good feel-good. And you know what? I like the character of Forrest Gump. I think you rarely see characters like that on screen, and I think Tom Hanks knocked it out of the park.
See, I
But
think
I'll say,
I
like,
think
everybody. Sorry,
Go ahead. I just say it can function as a feel-good story, and I'm glad that a lot of people went to see it. But that doesn't make it fit to be the Best Picture winner of the year and to make it the representative of that movie year. I think that's kind of flawed in thinking that like something that has to be like this feel-good story should be what represents.
A fan favorite can be different than what we say is like the best picture that we want to be remembered by.
And on top of that, I will say, like, everybody in that movie had way stronger work in that period. Tom Hanks had like infinitely stronger work. Robin Wright had stronger work. Gary Sinise had stronger work. Robert Zemeckis had stronger work. Like, this isn't the strongest work of anybody. Maybe Michael T. Williamson, but this isn't the strongest work of anybody in this movie.
Before we move on, I do want to call out Chance a little bit on sitting back there acting like he can identify all the Olympic ping pong players that ever came. How dare this Olympic ping pong player goes unnoticed?
Oh, but he also on the cover of Forbes. He was an All-American football player.
He uncovered Watergate. He uncovered Watergate. Don't forget.
Nobody told him anything. He spoke at pro and anti-war rallies. No one recognizes this guy.
I've actually been to Savannah, Georgia, guys, and sat on the bench. So I'll tell you, I got a little bit of history with this movie, and I just maybe that's the reason why. And you know, the thing is too is you're right. You know, sometimes that you got to remember the people that are voting for these movies, and it's different now with the preferential ballot. Forrest Gump may not have won if you had the preferential ballot, and you may have had let's say the 10 nominees. Back then, you got to remember the type of people that were voting, and I think it really went into the wheelhouse of those type of people that were voting. Is it right? No. I'm not saying it's right, but you got to remember of the types of people that were voting at the time, and they did not have the preferential ballot. So that really does make a big difference. And you don't know what's going to resonate, like I said, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Chance and I had a little bit of a thing the other day about another year that I would like to get. If you guys are going to have me back, which I don't know if you will, there's another year that I like to get and discuss in here about getting things wrong. This is a big one, though. I understand where you guys are covering. You guys can relate to Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction or whatever more than you can do Forrest Gump. And plus, you're younger than me, so maybe it tends to be an older person's type of film. I'll admit to it. I'm older than you guys, and it tends to be a film for older people.
I think it works well for kids.
Yeah,
because like when I was in elementary school. When I was in elementary school, like I knew like tons of kids who were huge fans of music. I don't think it's a generational thing. I just think like looking at it, maybe I was a little too old when I saw it the first time. Maybe I don't have that connection to it. I just look, and I know it sounds like I'm piling a lot more on this movie than I mean to. I don't think this is a terrible movie, even though it may sound like I do. I think this is a good, fun, enjoyable movie that I don't think had any business being the winner of Best Picture.
You see, this is why I hate the internet. You go on there, they hate Forrest Gump. Freaking best movie ever.
Thanks, Ray Romano. This is why you didn't get a nomination for Big Sick.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. So this is where we get to hopefully what's not the most boring portion, but when we are going to go one at a time and state our lists. And before we start, I do want to say that we have two honorable members of our panel that wanted to make the group. So we're still going to honor and acknowledge their lists as well as they were incorporated into the voting. And those would be our dear friends, Luca Fallon and Jen Kemp. So I will get to that right before I announce mine last. So
I have a change to my list, so I'm just going to let you know that now, Zach.
Whoa! Messing with the statistics, yo. Okay. Let's Paul go first so I can recalculate then.
Okay, well, it's not a big change.
What first effort all night?
So for 1994, if I'm ranking the nominees, at number 5 I have Forrest Gump. At number 4 I have, funny enough, 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Number 3 I have The Shawshank Redemption. Number 2 I have Pulp Fiction, and my favorite movie of these nominees is Robert Redford's Quiz Show.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
You just fuck things up so bad.
I changed my 3 and 4. Come on.
I'll tell you later. Okay.
All right. So who's going next?
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan.
I believe
Yeah,
I
let
had,
Dan go next.
I believe I had it at Four Weddings and a Funeral at 5, Quiz Show at 4, Shawshank Redemption at 3, Pulp Fiction at 2, and Forrest Gump at 1.
All right.
Okay, Chance.
And I guess I'll go to me next. So, number 5, Forrest Gump. 100 Miles. Number 4, Four Weddings and a Funeral. This is where this really got tough for me. Number 3, Quiz Show. These two are especially hard. Number 2, Shawshank Redemption, and number 1, Pulp Fiction.
All right. So our honorable members, we have Luca, who has Forrest Gump as their number 5, Pulp Fiction as their number 4. We need Luca here to be the Pulp Fiction hater. We want someone like, hey, Pulp Fiction, we needed him for it. But although I guess Dan kind of filled that spot.
Luca had Four Weddings at 3. They had Shawshank at 2, and Quiz Show at 1 also.
Baby.
And Jen Kemp had Four Weddings at 5. Kind of a trend there. Quiz Show at 4.
Oh.
Forrest Gump at 3. Shawshank at 2. And Pulp Fiction at 1. And
Thank you, Jen.
the final list, my list, I had Four Weddings at 5. Forrest Gump at 4. Shawshank at 3. Quiz Show at 2. And Pulp Fiction at 1.
Damn it.
Thank you, Zach.
Damn it. So
our
close.
finalized list, we have Four Weddings at number 5. We have Forrest Gump at number 4, and then there's such a tight race for number 2, and Paul had to go and give Shawshank an extra point, and now it's an actual tie. However, the judge there, I'm going to, because of more number 1 votes, I am going to put Shawshank at 3, which received 0 number 1 votes, and Quiz Show, which received 2 number 1 votes at number 2. But both of them are tied, but well in the lead at number 1. Probably all could have predicted Pulp Fiction, but we did have an interesting turn where I think people might not expect Quiz Show to be so high up. Definitely go see it. It's on Netflix.
Quiz Show's fantastic.
It just kind of got buried behind the weight of Shawshank and Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump.
I think people really need to go revisit Quiz Show. Quiz Show is fantastic.
Okay, so our official winner, we'll call the books. Oh, actually, this one doesn't matter. We'll say the official canon winner later. But if we had to keep the same nominees, our winner would be Pulp Fiction.
Although, as far as the nominees go, I mean, we all have the same idea. Like, we can do better. We can do way better than these nominees.
And before we get into this, it's a very interesting list. I feel like there was some diversity spread. So we are giving a chance for everyone to say their individual 5s, to shout out some more movies that really feel have some worth for that year as well. Continue, James.
All right.
Yeah, so who do you want to go off to?
Dan, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. Can I do a couple honorable mentions first and then
Yes.
go?
Yes.
And Zach can attest to this. I did have a hard time getting this narrowed down to 5. So I think I had like 7. So I'm gonna and I forgot. I kind of forgot it. So, but I've already put my list in, and Zach's got it, so I'm not going to change it. But so my honorable mentions are Leon the Professional and Clerks. I love those 2 films. Love those 2 films. I forgot they came out in 1994, or they probably would have been in there before my other ones that I had. So, but what are you going to do? This is all in good fun anyway. But I had number 5, I believe I had
canon, Dan.
I had Ed Wood at number 5. I loved Ed Wood. Oh, God, I loved Plan 9 from Outer Space. I love Johnny Depp, Tim Burton. These guys are all, Bill Murray. This is such a fun movie. If you watch Plan 9 from Outer Space, you would just really enjoy this movie more because of all of the behind the scenes. I mean, George the Animal Steele. Oh, God. But then number 4, I think I had The Lion King. How the heck did The Lion King not make the top 5 best pictures of the year that year? That's ridiculous. This freaking movie's amazing. It's my #1 animated film of all time. How did The Lion King make the top 5 that year? That's shocking to me. That is shocking. Then I had the other 3 that were nominated, and I have them in the exact same order that I had them in when we voted: Shawshank, Pulp Fiction, and Forrest Gump. I had Forrest Gump #1, boys.
Okay, Paul.
All right. So yeah, I have a few honorable mentions. I also had Clerks and Leon the Professional as honorable mentions on my list. Great movies. I think Clerks also is like a very landmark moment again for independent cinema. I think that movie is like it still holds up, and I think that like it's Kevin Smith at his most Kevin Smith. As far as other honorable mentions, I also wanted to give some credit to The Lion King. And then I also wanted to give some credit to the Three Colors trilogy, which had White and Red both released in 1994. Those are phenomenal movies as well. But now to get down to my actual list. So for my personal list, at number 5, I had our winner, Pulp Fiction. I've said my piece about Pulp Fiction. Again, it's a movie that's hugely important, and it still holds up, and it just moves, and it's a great script and all those. At number 4, I have a bit of a wild card, and that's the 1994 Steve James documentary Hoop Dreams, about 2 basketball players from Chicago. I just think that's arguably the best documentary ever made. There's a bit of a conflict of interest. One of my professors is actually a line producer on this movie, so he has a lot of cool behind-the-scenes sort of stories. But I just think it's such an effective documentary, and it really, even if you're not a basketball fan, the movie is absolutely fascinating. It gets you into the life of these 2 kids, and it shows you the impact that basketball has on people's lives and what the rise and the fall can be like for like people who aren't necessarily superstars. And then at number 3, was also on Dan's list. That's going to be Tim Burton's Ed Wood. I think this is Johnny Depp's best performance. You have a lot of great other actors in supporting roles. Vincent D'Onofrio as Orson Welles. Bill Murray's phenomenal again. But I think it's just a great look at someone who is so passionate about film. I don't think that maybe anyone necessarily loves movies more than Ed Wood did, and I think capturing that is such an effective moment in Tim Burton's career, and I think it's probably also his best film overall. And then at number 2, I had my number 1 of the nominees, Quiz Show. Again, I just think this movie is incredibly effective. It's so rewatchable. I revisit it from time to time, and it works for me every single time. And yeah, the characters are great. And yeah, I've said most of my piece, but I think, and then on my number 1 is going to be maybe the most subversive of all of this. It's one of my favorite films from one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, and that's going to be Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express, which is a Hong Kong drama from 1994 again, which it's a great romance. It interweaves drama with the romance like so effectively. Like it's these people that are all congregating in this restaurant, and there are these various different relationships by these people and how they're interweaving with each other. And it's such an effective movie. Great performances, great direction, great writing. I implore anyone, if you've not seen this movie, it is absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, my number 1 is Chungking Express.
I saw that on the list, and I was like, oh my God, that came out that year? Holy crap. What a good year 94 was. I didn't realize it.
A pretty great year when you dive deeper into it.
Wow.
And we'll continue to dive deep, and we'll go with Chance next.
Yeah, so I had a couple honorable mentions. Actually, Paul tried to guess my nominees, and he was a lot closer than I think he might think. So, honorable mentions for me, real quick. I think someone brought up already. Leon the Professional. Leon the Professional, I think, is a fantastic movie. My favorite Luc Besson movie by a long shot. Thought it was great. Hoop Dreams I've been brought up. Three Colors. I'm more partial to white than red. But yeah, one I like. I know probably would have been nominated, but Legend of the Fall. I really like Legend of the Fall a lot. Natural Born Killers, same thing. Natural Born Killers. And 3 that I really love, but never would have been nominated for Best Picture. Speed, Jackie Chan's Legend of the Drunken Master, and The Crow. Brandon Lee's The Crow. All right, but on my actual nominees, I didn't send you the ranked list, Zach. I apologize, but I just ranked it like right now. I think I may have sent you the ranked list by accident, but here's my ranked list. At number 5, already brought up both these guys. Ed Wood. Ed Wood, I think, is arguably Tim Burton's best movie, and I think it does I think they already said like it puts you at like in the shoes of like a guy who has such a passion for doing this one thing that he is really not good at, and I think Johnny Depp's great. It has that great chemistry between him and Martin Landau as Bela Lugosi, which did mirror his real life relationship with Vincent Price, Bill Murray, Vincent D'Onofrio, Orson Welles. So many great performances in this movie, and it made for a really great product about just a movie about movies. Surprised that didn't get nominated. That didn't get much love outside of Martin Landau's win Best Supporting Actor. My number 4, one of my personal favorites, and I think possibly this director's best. That's Kevin Smith's Clerks, which has already been talked about by both Dan and Paul. I think Clerks is fantastic. I remember the first time I watched it, you pick up like all like the subtle nuances, and it really does a good job putting you in the shoes. That does a great job putting in the shoes of a guy who's living, just the average everyday guy. And I thought they did it really well, especially with that he went with the original ending where he just goes home. Well, not the original, the alternate ending where he just goes home at the end of the day.
Wait, this movie wasn't supposed to be here today.
He wasn't supposed to be there today. And number 3, I have one I think higher than both of you. I have The Lion King. The Lion King, I think it stands apart from Disney. It came out at a time where Disney was making great movie after great movie. I think it stands apart from the rest of them just because of the great use of animation, the great songs, and just bring something brand new to the table. It's like it was literally like Shakespeare with fur, and like so many great things about loss and like being who you're meant to be. I thought that was fantastic. Number 1 and 2, this was really hard for me, but number 2 I have same thing as our last ranking, Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption I think is a masterfully made film. I don't know if it's my favorite Frank Darabont, because I do love The Green Mile, but definitely a standout from the year of 1994. And my number 1, you guys shouldn't be all that shocked, Pulp Fiction. I mean, what can I say about something that has already been said? So Ed Wood, Clerks, Lion King, Shawshank, Pulp Fiction.
It's exactly the list you gave me, by the way. So don't.
Yeah, that's what I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember if I did or not.
My people, I mean, my heart. Now all this numbers means
Can I say
nothing.
one thing about The Lion King real quick? I remember we had a little 6 theater in my town that I live in, and before they built this giant big theater with 18. This movie for literally 2 weeks, guys, had lines going out the door and around the block for Lion. That's how popular that movie was at that time. I just want to bring up that little point. That's all.
Yeah, and we will definitely get into that a little more.
Can I also give a nod to Jean-Claude Van Damme's Time Cop?
We'll definitely get to Lion King a little more spoilers, but we will go to our special guest list. We have Luca. Luca at the 5th spot put Quiz Show. The 4th spot put Hoop Dreams. At the 3rd spot was 3 Colors Red. Luca's, if you don't know them, very expectantly the most idiosyncratic list, as we have 3 Colors at number 3, and at number 2.
Luca? No.
Number 2, Shallow Grave, which is a
list.
really fun. Danny Boyle's first movie is a really exciting movie, and at number 1 had Ed Wood.
Wow, actually, not as strange as I thought. Not as strange as I thought his was going to be.
Yeah. But had 2 picks that made no one else's list, which was the most. Lava's had a lot of crossover.
Although Shallow Grave is great.
Yeah, Shallow Grave is really, really fun. Jen Kemp had at number 5, Ed Wood. At number 4, Lion King. At number 3. At number 3, one of the, I think, least expected movies to be on here, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Oh, really?
Ask Jen about it. We'll get her on here just to talk about the love of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. At number 2 was Shawshank Redemption. And at number 1, Pulp Fiction. And the only list that...
There's one movie I think is a really big oversight.
It's interesting this year, I think, that none of the Best Actress nominated movies were nominated for like any other awards whatsoever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's when the Best Actress was really going like out there with these really indie, small, kind of oddball films. The Best Actress for a long time, but like that whole entire decade of the 90s was going to these strange kind of films that weren't like widely like loved or saw films. It was a weird decade.
I think that's what the
I-
Academy should do, is shine a light on movies like that.
If you think through, or if you look through even recent, Academy history, it's still kind of the female-led movies still have a lower chance than the others. I mean, this year I think was a big year for it with a lot of female-led movies that had a lot of notice, but that it's such a rarity.
Lady Bird didn't win, Zach. Get over it.
But no, Lady Bird, Shape of Water, 3 Billboards, 3 leaders throughout the whole time, all female-led movies.
But
No,
the
yeah, I know, I know.
had an awful year for female performance. This year was a phenomenal. This past year, you're right, Zach, was a phenomenal year for female performances, and it was just tons of great movies with female actresses.
Stories, yeah.
In the year before, awful year. I mean, it's weird how it comes and goes like that.
Okay.
I think it was a decent year. It's harder to find, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Get
No,
back-
I think
to the most important list. You guys just don't want to hear the list. You're just so excited and want to wait a little
We're
more.
building anticipation.
But sorry, Christmas Day has to come. Here's the best list, but also the least exciting because I have only movies with crossover. I have no movies that are no one else's list.
was Greta Gerwig on any movie in the '94?
Greta Gerwig was approximately 9 years old at this point. I do
I'll
want
let
to
you know
say,
that.
as we get into this, 2 of us were alive at this time. The other 2, I believe, not around yet. I was very well into my years at 5 years old in 1994. And I will get into that a little bit. I definitely saw Pulp Fiction in theaters. It was like, this is revolutionary, guys. 5-year-old Zach was really thoughtful about this stuff.
5-year-old Zach really ahead of his time.
5-year-old Zach was probably my prime, and I've
Can we get to current Zach and see what his list is?
Okay, my list would be Disney sing-along tapes, Schoolhouse Rock, and just like the Animaniacs soundtrack. Not even a movie. I don't know what a movie is as a 5-year-old. I'm just gonna say soundtrack. Okay, so my honorable mentions. I do love Leon the Professional. I think there is some flaws behind it. I might be the only person.
It hasn't
really
aged great.
this way,
It
but
hasn't
I'm a
aged great.
huge. Yeah. Well, I just watched it for the first time and I enjoyed it. But I think this is a rare statement I'm about to say, but I am like a huge Natalie Portman fan. Like probably my favorite actress out there since I was, a kid and watched her in things like Beautiful Women, which I did see when I was young and followed her career going up. And like Jackie was one of my favorite performances of recent time. And I just love Natalie Portman a lot. And I think this is a great, young Natalie Portman performance there. Other ones, Heavenly Creatures, Peter Jackson, one of his earlier movies, I think it is a wonderfully told story and creative story with great early performances by Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky, who just doesn't get enough love, and that kind of is an example of why she should have had a bigger career other than 2.5 Men as her landmark. That's the rough thing. She's such a good actress. And then another Bullets over Broadway I find really funny. I find a lot of enjoyment in Woody Allen movies. I understand that is very problematic, and so it's probably not necessary for us to celebrate it, so did not make my list, but still a movie that I enjoy. And another movie along the lines, kind of following a little bit in the footsteps of Woody Allen, bringing some of that humor into the 90s. And another writer and director that I don't think gets a lot of notice is Barcelona by Whit Stillman, really close to making my list. I was really fighting between Heavenly Creatures, Barcelona, and what actually made my number 5. I just find it really funny, and I don't know the actor right now, but the one guy who's also in Kicking and Screaming is just
the lead actor? Chris Eigerman, you
not
mean?
the lead. Well, like the second lead, the one he was in Kicking and Screaming. He was the Navy guy.
Chaz Palminteri.
But who?
No, never mind. Sorry.
And I'm talking about Barcelona. Barcelona. Okay, but he was also in Kicking and Scream, but he's just
Chris Eichmann.
Okay, yeah, and he's just one of the best like pseudo intellectual like beanbags that you could have had. Just really, really funny at that kind of role. I don't think beanbags is an insult, but should definitely be thrown around more. I'm creating now. I'm calling all my students beanbags tomorrow. I feel like it elicits the meaning I want it to elicit. But getting to my actual list, and the reason why Barcelona didn't quite make it is I just doesn't have the artful quality that I did put at number 5, which is Chungking Express, that I included as well. There is the use of motion and light and music all together creates this very exhilarating feel, while
it's
also
really visceral,
very meditative as well. It's very relaxing, even though it had this kind of kinetic motion to it. That I think is kind of why Wong Kar-wai movies, work in a unique way, and can really kind of trap you into that vision. And it is just a great, urban romance that felt, real and raw. And best part of watching foreign movies is to get me to, understand cultures in a way that I'm never there. I felt like I was living life in Hong Kong, just like it was an everyday around here. And it's something that, if you stay stuck in mainstream movies, you don't kind of get that feel of the global, nature of life. And so my number 4 movie is I freaking forgot.
Hooray.
My number 4 is... that's why you just devoted a half hour to me blabbing my way through my list. My number 4 is Ed Wood, which, it just does everything great that I hate about The Room. I think that it really has a love for this character, but an understanding of why.
You mean the disaster artist?
Disaster artist, which I hate. But I think it has a love for this character and this dreamer that he is. It really has a warm voice, but also like not hiding behind that he probably shouldn't have been making movies. And I think it is one of his most endearing, Tim Burton's most endearing movies and interesting movies there is. So my number 3, I have Hoop Dreams. I am a huge basketball fan, but I also am kind of a sucker for the documentaries. What's the style? Jesus Christ! I've been talking too long. The style when there's capsule people living, and I think there's just grand scaleness to the to Hoop Dreams that it makes the length of the movie have worth. That movie does not work without a 3-hour length, because the scale of it, the scope of it is so huge to really kind of dig into these people's lives and kind of understand, how they evolved into these, young adults that they're able to evolve into. Because I say I love basketball, but it's not a basketball movie. It's a movie about inner city youth and what growing up in that city and that lifestyle kind of does to people. And it's another thing that I feel like people have that kind of urban life, people have preconceived ideas and opinions about, and this is just an important movie to kind of destroy those and create a little more ability to relate to different ways of life or different cultures. So my number 2 movie is Pulp Fiction, which I do love. I was a 5-year-old and said this has changed my whole life. But actually, when I watched as a 13-year-old, still was kind of transgressive in my movement towards serious film, and what I liked, which is how it affected a lot of people in 1994 as well. And number 1 really is quite possibly my favorite movie if I have to put onto it. And I feel like it's predictable knowing me. I am kind of a person who really propels a lot of love for family movies and to take it serious. And I think Lion King is just such an artful, beautifully done movie. I watched it recently. I took a day off work. I needed a day off work. I didn't take it to watch Lion King, but that's what I told my kids because I found it funny to say that. So I just didn't come because I watched Lion King instead. But
Lion King more important than you kids.
But I think just from that first scene, it's my favorite first scene of all time, opening scene of all time. And it doesn't dive right into the story, but more just kind of creates the view of that world and all the animals kind of slowly marching in to see Simba being born, and just beautiful images of these animals and this wildlife. And it hits me in a very spiritual level. I'm not like a very spiritual person, but it reminds me, of the grandness of life. And like, I'm the kind of person that like, I probably will one day cry at a zoo. I just know this is going to happen. I was walking in the zoo by myself in Madison on Sunday. I was like, if I was in a different mood, I can just like, I feel I was going to be a zookeeper growing up, and I do feel a deep connection to, animals and natural life. And I think that first 5 minutes kind of feeds off that connection so strongly, with the great circle of life in the background. And it's just a expertly crafted animation movie, and the precedent's already been set for for anime movies to be nominated with Beauty and the Beast, when Lion King is steps ahead of Beauty and the Beast for me. So that is my final list. So
first of all, let me just say I can picture Zach Ford as 5-year-old. It's like, Zach Ford, 5 years old. Pulp Fiction changed my life. He cuts out of the theater, just rejects his sippy cup. Give me a glass, damn it.
And then crying during Lion King. I lived the kid's life and the adult life.
Go, geez. All right. So, Zach, according to like our panel today, what are our nominees for Best Picture from 1994?
So our nominees, not in a rank, we will rank those in a second. But we have Ed Wood, which was on everybody's list. Pulp Fiction, Lion King, Shawshank Redemption, and the one surprise out there, Hoop Dreams did make the list with 3 nominations. Hoop Dreams.
Hoop Dreams made the list?
What? Hoop Dreams was the 5th. Yes, made the list.
Wow. Okay, so... All right,
do I need to say it one more time? Because everyone is going to rank it now, so I'll say it one more time. We have Ed Wood.
Yeah, one more time.
Ed Wood, Pulp Fiction, Lion King, Shawshank Redemption, and Hoop Dreams.
All right, so now we all rank these nominees.
Want me to go first?
That would be great. Yes, thank you.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you guys a lot of credit. You guys did a great job on this. Like, I forgot about Chungking Express when I was looking at the list and stuff, and then Hoop Dreams I completely forgot about. It's my favorite documentary of all time. So I completely crapped the bed on that one because I forgot it came out that year. It's my #1 favorite documentary of all time. I absolutely love that film. And I have a big history with the game of basketball and coaching basketball and stuff. So that really resonates with me a lot. So I have 4 of the 5. So Hoop Dreams is the 5th. So I'm just going to move everything. I'm gonna move everything up since I'll put Hoop Dreams at 5 and put Pulp Fiction at 1, Shawshank at 2, Lion King at 3, Ed Wood at 4, and Hoop Dreams at 5.
So I'm going to restate it so I can get the stats. You have Pulp Fiction at 1.
Yep. Shawshank 2.
Okay.
Lion King 3, Ed Wood 4, and
okay.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. If that was the 5 pictures that were nominated, I would have been just as happy as I was with the. I mean, I guess Quiz Show and 4 Weddings and a Funeral now, in hindsight, wow, that.
Take it easy on Quiz Show. Take it easy on Quiz Show.
Take it easy, all right?
4 Weddings does look a little odd in hindsight.
And Forrest Gump.
Well, obviously, you guys don't like it, so that's,
Okay, Paul, what is your ranking?
Okay, so at number 5, I have Shawshank Redemption. At number 4, I have The Lion King. At number 3, I have Pulp Fiction. Number 2, Hoop Dreams, and number 1, Ed Wood.
Okay. Chance, are you ready with your list?
Yeah, I am ready.
Okay.
So I have Hoop Dreams at 5, Ed Wood at 4, Lion King at 3, Shawshank at 2, Pulp Fiction at 1. Do you get that, Zach?
I'm going to re-go over it to make sure I have everyone's right real fast.
Yeah.
But I think I got yours. And I'm going to say Luca had Pulp Fiction at 5, obviously. Shawshank at 4, Lion King at 3, Hoop Dreams at 2, and Ed Wood at 1. Jen had Hoop Dreams at 5, Ed Wood at 4, Lion King at 3, Shawshank at 2, although I wrote 24,
Shawshank 24.
and Pulp Fiction at number 1. And then my personal list is I have it backwards. It's all confusing. Shawshank at 5, Ed Wood at 4, Hoop Dreams at 3, Pulp Fiction at 2, and of course Lion King number 1, where it belongs. Dummies.
All right, so Zach, you want to tabulate our scores to find out the real winner? I'm not sure we're going the right winner, not the real winner.
I think we know what it is already.
We already know, but I just want to hear Zach say it.
The runner-up. That's the worst thing about the Oscars is they don't tell you what came in second. That's all I care about.
Right, what came in second place? What got silver? That's all I want to know.
So why I do this math, which will only take about 1 more minute, if you guys have any other thoughts about the year or other films that were mentioned, this is a great time to...
I'm going to say I'm glad that nobody said True Lies because that movie has aged very poorly.
And in defense of True Lies, I really like that movie. So, yeah.
No, I just want to say, when I got this invite to come on here, and I knew it was going to be kind of a divisive conversation because of the Shawshank and Pulp Fiction and how everybody always thought, well, they're better films than Forrest Gump and Forrest Gump should win. But if you look at the year as a whole, it really does stand up as a great year for film in the last 25 whatever years we've been watching movies. It really is a stand-up solid year for films. And
we use Oscar
feels like the Three Colors trilogy, and I forgot all about. I'll be honest. I'm gonna sit here and be honest with you guys. I never saw the Three Colors trilogy. I have it sitting right over on the shelf, and I need to do a video for my show.
I think only 2/3. I think only 2/3 came out in the 1994, didn't they?
Yes, Blue came out in 93.
I have considered the best one, so the best one came out, and it's widely considered the best one.
It is the best one. Chance is wrong.
But
I prefer white.
I've seen Red and not the others. Is that a mistake? Should I have seen the other two first?
No, you picked the right one.
But also,
okay. I didn't know if I need to watch them in order.
Jim Carrey had he had a coming out party in that year. Jim Carrey had 3 phenomenal films in the year 1994 that he'll never have that year again.
I don't know if I'd use the word films when describing those movies.
He's my favorite comedian of all time.
Is it weird? Is it weird that I never actually finished Dumb and Dumber?
Oh well.
So back to 5-year-old Zach. 5-year-old Zach went and saw Ace Ventura and was just like, "Fuck this shit." Said that at the screen, shouted it out. But man, for real, like Jim Carrey, me and my brother just hated upon, and we were like 6-year-old assholes. Like Jim Carrey doesn't know what humor is. As his little kids.
Oh, also one that I almost forgot to mention. Sorry, real quick is Reality Bites. I love that movie. That movie is.
We didn't bring Reality Bites. I thought that was gonna be on Zach's list for sure. Reality Bites.
I have not seen it.
Great. Maybe the best Ben Stiller's been as a director. You should watch Reality Bites, Zach.
I do want to remind people, if you have other options you want to bring up on that you think we missed out on, please mention, because this is, as I said, a viewing experiment for me. Many of the movies that we mentioned, and I even talked about on my list, I watched for the first time. I don't have a great, background. I get so caught up in modern movies. This is the time for me to slow down and watch movies other years. I actually watched 14 movies in preparation for this, with a few of them being repeats, but I think at least 10 were new first watches for me.
Which ones were first time watches? Do you want to just run those down?
The ones on my list, first time watches, was Chungking Express and Hoop Dreams. Hoop Dreams just always was on my list, but because of the 3-hour runtime, just kind of never really put it in.
You're saying you didn't watch Street Fighter for this video?
I did not watch Street Fighter for this video, and there's
How dare you not watch really into Street Fighter?
I did watch Barcelona heavily, Creatures, The Professional. I watched Clerks.
Time Cop, obviously. Speed.
Time Cop.
Speed. Did you watch Speed?
Oh wait! There is actually one that I totally forgot again, and that's Ang Lee's Eat, Drink, Man, Woman.
I have
Oh,
never
that's
even
a
heard
good
of it.
one. That is a good one.
That
Oh,
movie
Shallow
is-
Grave I watched for this. Yeah.
It's a Taiwanese movie from Ang Lee's early career.
Okay.
That
So
year,
here we go. I need
It
a
really.
drum roll from Chance. I need a trumpet from Paul, and a trombone from Dan for our final song. It's our official
So
song.
specific.
Here we go.
So specific.
And cut. I said cut, yo. Okay. Our number 5 is unfortunately Hoop Dreams. Jen Kemp did say she has not seen Hoop Dreams, so had an unfair advantage.
Oh,
Our number 4, Shawshank Redemption. Number 3, really close to number 2, but number 3 was Ed Wood. Number 2 was The Lion King. I could have gypped the system and made sure you guys can't challenge me if I said that was number 1, but it's number 2, and the number 1 by a pretty good margin is Pulp Fiction.
I mean, we could challenge you. We can all do basic math.
So
it was in like
Pulp
everyone's
Fiction's
top
grand-
3, basically.
Hey,
All right.
Okay, otherwise, in short news, before we say our goodbyes, I do want to say our next show, which will be, we plan on doing this on near the last week of every month. So at the end of, no matter where they get posted, but we're going to at least film them last week of every month. And so at the end of May, we plan on doing 1967. So if you want to play along, follow along, catch up on some movies from 1967, catch up on the Oscar nominees, which are Dr. Dolittle, In the Heat of the Night, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, The Graduate, and Bonnie and Clyde. And then once again, any other movies you think deserve more focus, shout those out. I make it my to watch list. Tell me what I should watch to prep for this 1967 video. And if you want to be part of this, private message me and we can have that discussion as well.
And there will be, I will honor that when this is published, there will be a poll put onto the Full Metal Media Facebook page, so your votes will get to be heard too. Whether you think our rankings are right, wrong, doesn't matter. You're going to see our nominees, and you get to decide who you think should have won that year. But guys, this was a good show. Great first outing for this new series. I want to thank the panel, Zach, Paul, and Dan. I've been Chance Ellison, and we will see you next month for 1967. See you later.